What are the market trends to watch as we head into 2026? And what do dairy producers need to know to stay ahead? Well, in this episode of the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, we're joined by Joe Kern of EverEgg. Joe breaks down current market trends in the egg industry, along with global influences, margin pressures, and what may be the biggest threats to our farming businesses in the year ahead. That and more here today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Uplevel Dairy Podcast founding partner Adisseo, a global leader in nutritional solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Feed is the greatest expense on any dairy operation, and don't you want to know how an adjustment to the ration will affect your bottom line? Adisseo empowers nutritionists to make informed ration balancing decisions with MilkPay.com. Customizable to your dairy's own data, this profitability calculator puts the power of real-time milk market information in the palm of your hand. Find out how much your latest ration change is really costing you with the free MilkPay app available on iOS and through MilkPay.com. What's your background?
I went to school back in the mid-'80s and came out when there was no jobs available in the midst of the farm crisis. And so fought and scratched for a job with ADM at the time. And so then I hung around, did a lot of merchandising for them. I stuck with it way longer than anybody with any intelligence did. I couldn't get out. Spent time in the Chicago Board of Trade on the floor, fell in love with the transactional side of the business. That was with Continental Grain, was trading a soy deck across the entire United States, understood the intricacies. But working with ADM taught me the discipline of how trade works, and then I got to apply it. From there, I got hired by Premium Standard Farms at the time. It was a startup company in the early 90s. Eventually that went bankrupt, which was the best education ever. I didn't see that one coming, but it was a huge education. You found out how money flow really works at that point in time. Was hired by a gentleman named Jeff Hansen. I worked with and for him for 15 years at Iowa Select Farms, one of the smartest guys I've ever been around in my life. And it wasn't Harvard Business School smart. It was street smarts. Did that until 2008. That's when I was just sharing that this ethanol thing started to take off. And by that point in time, I was in my 40s. I kind of could see what was going to happen. There weren't a whole lot of folk that had. And I started an entity. I started my own company that took the disciplines of what success looked like in large-scale agriculture and brought it down to that next tier of producers. Put a couple 100,000 miles on a car in a year and took every single speech opportunity that there was. So it was a lot of fun just kind of developing that. And then in 2022, I was approached by the folks from EverEgg as the transition from dairy technology was starting to get applied to livestock. They were looking for an inroad. We had the customer base. We were very weak on technology at that point in time as we reached an agreement. Stuck with that. There was an opportunity for some financial provisions that led me to April of 2025. I quote retired. After I gave Laura advice how to run the household for 3 days, she said, "You can go do something else for a little bit." That's being facetious, but I had too much energy. I couldn't retire. And I'll tell a story. This is the literal truth. I was out playing golf on a weekday afternoon. My dad's been dead for 15 years, and he was telling me, "You can do better than this. You've got something better to do." So that's when I started investigating how can I start to give back to the producers that have allowed me to have a lifestyle and a life, and that's the current focus.
And so that's where you're at now?
Yep.
Yeah. Doing engagements like this, like you just walked off the stage from today?
I did, yes. But I'm currently the vice president of livestock for an upstart co-op called Cooperative Livestock Marketing Alliance that is attempting to put some protections in place for the livestock producers through some legal vehicles.
Okay.
Very excited about where it's going.
And now there's an intersection then with the dairy industry with some of the livestock protection that's now available for dairy, right?
Absolutely.
Beef on dairy and also dairy calls as well.
Yes, and this all started. So in 2018 or so is when we started to augment the dairy insurance markets. That's when we really started to create some financial incentives. That was the marrying of government subsidizing of commercial practices that we had in risk management. that then parlayed into the livestock industry, into hogs and to beef in 2020 or so. Keep in mind, we were in the throes of COVID when a lot of this stuff was getting rolled out, and we didn't know what to do with it. We were more concerned with animal welfare and how to properly handle animals that weren't going to make it to the packing plant. And so prices were depressed, but you could feel that eventually we're going to work through this and this is going to become a very valuable tool. And that's exactly what happened. But the dairy market absolutely paved the way for the livestock market. And with this latest iteration from One Big Beautiful Bill, it's provided even more augmentation. I think it's a excellent opportunity for the dairyman in order to pick and choose his way through the minefield of what looks to be some challenging markets, while at the same time taking advantage of what's going on inside the beef market with the beef on dairy situation. So I think it's a very optimistic outlook.
Yeah, and so you just stepped off the stage here, Joe, at Adisseo's VIP dairy meeting, and we're sharing this global outlook on economics and really what that looks like for the U.S. producer, what matters to them, and just run through the highlight reel, if you would. What were some of the key messages that you wanted to make sure these dairy nutritionists and others in the audience left with today?
Well, number one, it's a very noble career that we're embarking on with feeding the world. The demand for protein on a global basis is going to go nothing except higher. It's unsatisfied right now. We're about 2/3 deficit protein, largely because of some income disparity large across the world. United States is completely exempt from that equation. So you've got to think in a global forum of where are we serving humanity. So number one, you're in a noble profession. Number two, economics are going to look very favorable going forward here because of the government support programs that we talked about that really keep you out of the ditch from an adverse condition. The grain side of it is also in a similar situation. Is we bumped up the PLC and the ARC coverage levels. Those are going to ensure cost of production. And you might say, well, what does that do for me? It keeps the acres coming. So we're going to stay very static on acres. You're not going to see acres lay fallow because the government program will ensure that basically my worst case scenario is break even. And that if something positive happens, if we happen to get that bin buster year, I'm going to make some pretty good money. At the same time, you cannot deny the increase coming out of South America of what their impact is on world markets. They've saturated the world market. We recently had a little bit of a dust up here with this Chinese situation, but make no mistake, it's the Brazilians are going to own at least 3/4 of what that Chinese market looks like. And the United States is going to be the residual. So we're going to get the acres in the United States because of the program. We're going to put a cap on prices because of the increased production coming out of South America. And the livestock producer is going to have the advantage of an abundant supply at a reasonable price. This is a really good setup for as far as the eye can see.
If we were to go back a few weeks from where we are right now, when President Trump announced that Argentine beef would be coming to the U.S. here, there's chaos in the cattle markets,
Yes.
right? And so what I'm hearing from you is there's maybe a little bit of calm to just sit back and just ease into and have some clarity over what does this really mean for the U.S. producer, and also for our audience purposes here, what does that really mean for the dairymen?
So you've got a lot of balls that got thrown into the air at the same time. And as we talk, we're still in the midst of a government shutdown. And so a large driver behind the cattle market was both the fundamental piece, which is very real and has not moved one bit. So we got the fundamentals at play, but also the speculative markets. The large investors had come back into the market. They've had a very positive year. They're seeing that their returns on their portfolio have been outstanding. We don't get any government reports right now to understand what their positions look like. And it's almost inevitable that they have liquidated a portion of their long position and have taken profits coming into the end of the year here.
So let's look at the global scale here. Can you just walk us through again some of these key highlights that you shared with our audience today of what some of the major movements are that you're keeping your eye on in different regions outside of the U.S. right now?
Sure. So number one is the trade agreements, the tariff situation that is difficult, if not impossible, to handicap. That I think that's going to be the longer term driver. In the shorter term, that we have prices that remain to be reasonably profitable, not excessively profitable, mind you, but we're not taking anybody out of business right now. The birth situation, specifically the growth that's going to be coming out of Africa as a nation, is going to require, from a humanitarian standpoint, more protein. And so I think the take home message is the world wants more protein. The United States is surplus protein, and we're really good at being efficient producers of the same. And you've seen a shift. Even Bill Gates recently came out and said, all that global warming stuff, that's secondary to alleviate suffering. And I think that we, by and large, can get our arms around that and say that's a much more acute human need, is the alleviation of suffering. And one of the ways we define that is through nutrition. And I think that's why global agriculture, and specifically North American agriculture, have a very bright future.
Yeah. So let's kind of open that up. So you've just addressed a challenge and an opportunity, right? Challenge of stepping up to improve global suffering through food security and nutrition. Opportunity for the U.S. to be at a surplus protein demand to supply that. But what must happen for those two problems and solutions to connect with each other?
So, as much as it pains me to tell you that the free market system probably is not where it's at, is the solution. That the government intervention by providing humanitarian aid and government assistance is probably what greases the skids to allow the disappearance to occur, that puts markets back into an equilibrium. So I still think we're going to be very dependent upon governmental action that over the next 3 years or so. What's going to happen with SNAP benefits internally, but then also what do our congressional leaders take a look at as far as serving the population around the globe that's not U.S. citizenship.
What do those policies need to look like?
Well, we're going to have to give away a lot of stuff, is really what that amounts to. Is you end up with specifically within Africa, nations that have need and no means for that. And so the only piece is altruism coming from the U.S. population. And let's get real, we're the richest country in the nation. We can afford to do this. And that's probably a worthwhile cause.
So again, when you look at the major markets of agriculture, the major producers around the world, we talk about Brazil, we look at China. What else do you have your eyes on? Are those a couple of the major places that you're looking at? What am I missing?
So yeah, I started going to China in 2005, and I didn't want to leave the first time I was there because I swore that Tiananmen Square was going to occur any day one more time, and I didn't want to miss it. But at that point in time, it was the demand hub of the world, and you could feel it. I still think that you've got a large Asian contingency of economic activity that probably still fills that bill. You travel to Brazil and to Argentina, some of the South American countries, and you can feel Mato Grosso has only been in row crop production for 25 years. We're celebrating 100 years of hybrid seed in the United States with Pioneer, with Henry Wallace introducing that. Brazil has just truncated that 100 years into 25. And so it's a very accelerated process. And when you're there, you can feel it. The integration of technology, the availability of land means that they will be a player coming into the future. They've got some infrastructure deficiencies. It used to be roadways. They've recently built a railway. Interest rates are sky high right now. The United States still has several advantages. The available arable land, though, is coming out of Mato Grosso in Brazil.
So you look at that. You also pay a lot of attention to China.
Yes.
Correct? So trends that have really spoken to you more recently here about dairy, and let's just hone in on dairy, right? Dairy growth, dairy opportunity for U.S., but also what's being offset by their own ability to be self-sufficient in dairy.
I don't see China having a focus within the dairy side of it. The rumen is such an amazing, amazing biological feature that allows you to take grassland that doesn't have any other alternative purpose and turn it into some form of protein. You don't see a large increase in that effort. That if they're doing anything, it's more poultry oriented. The hog market has stayed reasonably static, if not declined just a little bit. And so the thrust from the Chinese government has been more poultry, not into cattle or hogs. And I don't think that you're going to see that one back off anytime soon. So it's going to keep an opportunity for someone, hopefully the United States, to satisfy that demand.
And as you mentioned before, we've got the protein.
We do.
We've got the protein, and hopefully it can get the access
Correct.
to the markets to get things where they need to be. Also some of the things that you've touched on today as you address this audience here is really looking at some of the trends with, biofuels, renewable energy. You've been watching these trends throughout your career and seen some major changes. Kind of in your viewpoint, break those out into what you're seeing with renewable diesel, ethanol, biodiesel.
Sure. And let's kind of take them in a chronological orders. We had ethanol introduced to us kind of in earnest in the 2004-ish era. And over the course of 10 years, we grew from kind of a neophyte industry into a 16 billion gallon industry. The protein sector had to make some huge adjustments. We had represented about 80% of the disappearance of corn on the balance sheet. That's changed to where feeding is about 40%. Ethanol is about 40%, exports are about 20% in real rough numbers there. And so we had to accommodate an industry that came in from nothing to representing almost the equivalent of what the feed sector looked like. And that was not an easy adjustment. Fast forward to today, we don't have a mandate. We're not building any new plants whatsoever. And so there's not a fear from the livestock sector that we're going to have a second coming of an ethanol industry that's going to disrupt our corn market. So I think we're going to stay reasonably static on that. The renewable diesel piece is interesting, is economically, it's a tough gig to make work. I mean, you've got to subsidize it very, very heavily in order for it to be even remotely competitive. And so as we're drawing that soybean oil to turn that back into renewable diesel, we end up with a surplus of soybean meal. And so it's almost be careful what you pray for, because you might get it, is this lament of, oh no, here comes another demand factor back into an agricultural market that's actually producing more soybean meal for consumption, and that's going largely into the livestock sector at some reduced prices. It doesn't help the ruminant as much as it helps the monogastric, but all of these things are antagonistic inside that ration. And so when soybean meal comes down, it's going to take other feedstuffs with it in order to try to compete. DDGs would be the most obvious comparison, but I think you're going to keep a real lid on your DDG prices if soybean meal wants to trade in the mid 200s on a cash value.
And your thoughts on biodiesel?
Biodiesel is dead. Biodiesel is rolling over. It's got some terrible handling characteristics. It never really took off. You're seeing a lot of those plants shuttered. That from a Midwesterner standpoint, if you get north of Interstate 80 or so in the wintertime with biodiesel, it has a tendency to gel up and clog up some fuel filters. So it's very limited in its application. And with the advent of renewable diesel is much more efficient conversion process. So I think you're going to continue to see that one being an ancient technology that kind of slips into the sunset.
Biodiesel is dead.
Biodiesel going nowhere.
I heard you from the soapbox earlier today, proclaiming that. And as we kind of wrap up our conversation today, I want to spend the last few minutes here just kind of walking through some of the trends when we look at, grain prices, beef prices, dairy markets, and what you see as some of the trends there. But if you could, really tie it back into what matters to the dairymen.
Sure. So, let's start in the order that you gave them. Very static feed prices. We've got a carry back into the market of 30 cents from December corn to July corn for the next 3 or 4 years. That's a healthy market. That's the way it is supposed to be. So I think that you're going to see corn hover in the cash market around $4 a bushel. You'd get a little bit more optimism in the forward curve that's needed to entice the acres to get planted. But then once we realize the yield, we take some of that premium out or traditionally have. And so I think we're in a really good setup from a not letting a supply shock disrupt where we're going. The beef side of it is probably the driver, and once you get past the President Trump announces of "Don't worry, we're going to import Argentinian beef," once you get past the gyrations that have occurred in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange that have not had a material impact on the cash markets whatsoever, and we settle all this out, we're still going to find ourselves deficit beef, prices remaining relatively high. We've been setting new records up until just recently. I do think we'll go back to those records. And at least through 2027, the projections would be lower beef production across the globe, equating to, coupled with good demand, which equates to higher prices. So that's allows that dairy producer specifically to express more value from the beef on dairy calves that would be coming out of his herd that probably represent the biggest opportunity for profits. From a milk standpoint, you've got 9.4 or so million head of cows, each one of them producing more milk on an annualized basis. Fluid milk is probably under just a little bit of pressure here from a consumption standpoint. And so we're going to have to convert that into a protein that's usable and physically transportable into different markets, whether that's butter and cheese or dried, whatever that looks like, is where I think the dairyman is going to find his fortunes indexed.
So if we were to kind of close this conversation out as a bit of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for dairy producers, let's just kind of categorize some of the things you've mentioned and maybe some things that come to mind that we haven't talked about. Greatest strengths for the dairy producer given the domestic and global situation right now.
Our productivity. We are wonderful. We're poster children for sustainability of continuing to produce more output given a static set of inputs. I think that our productivity is fantastic. That's going to be something we lean against. I think that we are good stewards of the environment also. So it's not only the utilization of resource stewardship, also what are we doing to care for the land type of stewardship. And so both of those fare very, very well across agriculture in North America as a large part, but also specifically within the dairy sector. Weaknesses are going to probably be milk prices of what we've traditionally seen as our revenue item. Those continue to come under pressure. That lays hand in hand with the productivity. Opportunities are probably the incorporation of more technology as we roll forward here, whether that's on the farm opportunities, risk management opportunities, I think are paramount in order for this success. Threats is probably always the knowing what I don't know. So some border closing disease interruption. I mean, we went through mad cow back in 2023 or so. We've had within the pork side of it, you've got ASF sitting just right off the border here in the Dominican Republic. So I think there's all kinds of different threats that we've got. Most of the ones that we can identify are probably the ones we shouldn't worry about the most. It's the ones we don't know about that I think would be the largest wild cards.
So I got to ask then, you have learned to maybe anticipate some movements, actions, threats, right? Like you said, the things you can't see. What could some of those threats be that maybe you've seen in the past?
The one that I think, well, we got a couple of things come to mind immediately. So the GLP-1s, this Ozempic, anybody that's diabetic is already getting the injections. We're now back into the vanity stage of what are we doing from a lifestyle standpoint, and what are the implications of needing more protein in our diet, and what are the long-term impacts? And we don't know. I mean, we are walking guinea pigs as far as that's concerned. But I do see more protein demand in the diet that's should be a favorable one. The one that probably bothers me the most is what happens with energy. That as we roll forward here, the proliferation of artificial intelligence means we need more computing power, means we need more energy generation in order to satisfy that. And then what happens to the prices as we bring this new demand into the energy environment? What happens to those of us on a status quo basis? And it's probably more of a regional situation than it is a blanket that covers everything. But I do think that the energy piece is probably the dark horse that we're not giving proper consideration to.
Ooh, interesting. So as we close out this conversation today, what's your one biggest learning lesson? Maybe the thing you would have told Joe 40 years ago about what it takes to be successful in the farming business.
So how about this? There have up until 2 years ago, There were 19 times when I was exactly sure what the market was going to do, and I was wrong 19 times in a row. It's only been recently where what you think is going to transpire and how all the cards you're laying out actually occurs. Is life doesn't give you layups. If it's so obvious to everyone, more than likely there's something that you're missing along the way. And so that cautious optimism and the checking of your ego and the checking of your certainty, maintaining a conservative approach to the adjustments that you make in life, and the level of confidence with which you make decisions. And we were talking about parenting earlier, and it was you don't know. You don't know. I mean, you only find out after several years later whether or not you want to be around the kids that you raised. And so I think that a lot of business decisions are fall in that same realm of you've got a confidence, you've got to confidently move in a direction, but cautioning yourself and not eliminating the opportunity for it to change your mind might be the biggest thing. And we change our mind a lot. So what I thought yesterday, suddenly, nope, I have new information. And so rather than calling that flip-flopping, it's like, no, that's behaving in a rational manner. I've got new information, therefore that's changed my path and my directive. And that might be, as I kind of round through that, the biggest piece is being willing to pivot and change.
How has the speed of information availability changed your role?
Oh, it's killer. It's so much more fun. It's so much fun. I've got one patent to my name, and that's for stochastic modeling. And I won't get into all the details, but the mathematical computation opportunities that we have at our avail now, and the statistics that we can apply, in the confidence intervals, in the utilization of metadata, so we don't have to have experimental farms. We've already done this. We've already done this on farms, and we just have to allow the systems to sort themselves to provide that predictive analytics on a roll forward is, I think, a wide open field and offers a lot of opportunity.
Well, Joe, so great to sit down with you today, talk some economics, but also some of your own personal experience from being in this business and learning along the way. Anything else you'd like to add today?
No, I think we've kind of covered the whole thing. I suppose the in the light of the cautious optimism that we have, it looks to be a very, very favorable environment for agriculture, for U.S. agriculture, and we just need to be aware of the boogeyman in the closet, not let them jump out and get us. And I think we're going to do just fine.
Well, and on that note, thanks, Joe, for joining us today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. You just heard from Joe Kern of Ever Egg, sharing his perspective on today's egg markets and what producers should be paying attention to. Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen. Don't forget to take a moment to follow, rate, and share these episodes. And as always, keep on growing, keep on learning, and up-leveling your dairy. This episode is sponsored by Uplevel Dairy Podcast founding partner Adisseo, a global leader in nutritional solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Feed is the greatest expense on any dairy operation, and don't you want to know how an adjustment to the ration will affect your bottom line? Adisseo empowers nutritionists to make informed ration balancing decisions with MilkPay.com. Customizable to your dairy's own data, this profitability calculator puts the power of real-time milk market information in the palm of your hand. Find out how much your latest ration change is really costing you with the free MilkPay app available on iOS and through MilkPay.com.